Hi Markel. We're going to talk right now about No Witchcraft for Sale. This was in your old textbook, and we looked at it through the lens of dispossession and disenfranchisement. Dispossession has to do with a loss of rights or property or abilities. Disenfranchisement is very similar, where you have no voice and you're not heard. You are marginalized, or the group was pushed out. And in particular, this one is based on colonial Africa, set back in colonial days, where um, European countries had come into Africa and taken over the country for the most part. And the people there that were originally there, the Africans themselves, had been dispossessed. They had no voice. They were not slaves there, but they were pretty close to slavery there. And we're going to talk about analyzing texts for recurring motifs, in particular, this particular motif. One thing we looked at was with our four corners, we went through several statements, and I'm just going to talk about a few of these to kind of give you an idea of what we did in class. One was Gideon should have given the scientists the medical information on the anti-venom serum, and we made that statement and let people choose whether they agreed or disagreed with this. All but one said they would have refused to have given the serum. And we looked at that because that's kind of surprising, but when you look at the light in light of the fact everything else they had owned had been stripped from them, all the wealth of the nation, the oil, the diamonds, the whatever, this is not really surprising that people kind of understood the author's perspective, which was this was the one thing Gideon still had. His father had been a witch doctor, and the knowledge of herbs and medicines that were occurred naturally in the jungle. He just didn't feel like he wanted to share one more thing. There wasn't one more thing he wanted to give up. So we kind of understood, although once they talked, they realized, that probably would be hard to do. So we looked at statement 2 and statement 3, which was Gideon really selfish for not sharing the serum, which is pretty similar to statement 1, and statement 3 personalizes it. Would we have done what Gideon did? Once we hit it personally, then there were a few more people who fell out and said, well, I agree, I understand why he did it, I can see the point of view in the story, but when it comes right down to it, I probably couldn't have done that, because I would have thought about all the innocent children that might have suffered or died or gone blind if I hadn't done it. So once we personalized it, they kind of backed away from the story, from at least the point of view. But we can understand what the author's trying to emphasize, which is there just came a point where this character felt like he had to draw the line. Another statement we looked at was comparing Gideon and his people's plight or situation in colonial Africa to the Native American situation in colonial America, which you would see both people were dispossessed by those who came from European situations, who were pretty much interested in stripping the land and the peoples for what they could enjoy themselves rather than sharing with them. Statement 5 had to do with comparing Gideon's situation to slavery. Gideon was not a slave, but they were being pretty much treated like slaves with no right or voice. And then this last one really was a new thought for them. They discussed whether religion in this story, we're not talking about religion in general, we're talking about in this story from this author's perspective, whether it was presented as a form of imprisonment for Gideon and his people. And if you'll look at the second page in the story, the second column on the right, it talks about how Gideon was kept in place by being a mission boy, by being trained, that this was the life God had for him. So you can see where this author is trying to say, in this situation, the way religion was taught here in that day and time, it was a way of keeping the people under rather than really freeing them to be everything they could be. So these were some of the topics we discussed. I hope this helps. Thanks.